Are you waiting for one day to wake up and find motivation? That it will suddenly become easy? Energy? Want to do something? Forget it. It will never happen. Motivation does not come to those who wait. But it comes to those who have already started. Take the first step, and you will not recognize yourself. I was sitting. I was not doing anything. I just looked at the screen, without even turning it on. It was dark in the room. And not because it was evening, but because I did not want to turn on the light. Sometimes, when it is dark, it is easier to pretend that you simply do not exist. That you have dissolved. Gone. And it is, even nice. I don't know when it started. Everything seemed to be going fine, until at some point something inside broke. Not loudly. Not abruptly. But quietly. At the seams. At first you just get tired. Then you start being late. Then you start putting things off. And then, you just lie there and don't want anything. I thought for a long time that it would pass. That I just needed to wait a little. To rest. To switch off. I waited. Days, weeks. But the motivation still didn't come. You know, when you sit there exhausted, you quickly start to hate yourself. You think over in your head. You could do it before. They do it, but you can't. How much longer can I feel sorry for myself? But nothing helps. You just drown in guilt and inaction. I stopped doing the basics. I gave up on the gym. Eating. Anyhow. Work. By force. Friends. I distanced myself. I didn't even notice how the house became dirty. How I became a stranger to myself. Every evening I said, I'll start tomorrow. And every morning I'd lie down again. It seemed to me that I was just waiting. A surge of energy was about to appear, that inner, well, it's time. But nothing happened. Because motivation doesn't come when you're doing nothing. It appears after. After the first effort. After the action. But I didn't know that then. One day I was just lying down. It had already been 3 hours. The phone was aside. The music was annoying. My head was empty. And suddenly, almost silently, a thought. You're not doing anything anyway. Why not just do something? Without meaning. Just like that. I stood up. Not because I wanted to, but because there was no reason not to get up. I didn't feel a surge of strength. There was no magic. Just movement. I went to the window. Then I did 2 bends. A few slow push-ups. Funny? Yes. But at that moment, I seemed to remember for a second what it was like to be alive. As if something inside shifted a little. As if I came back a little. It wasn't motivation. It was a push. Tiny. Imperceptible. But that's where it all started. In the morning, I didn't want to get up again. The blanket felt heavy. The world felt dim. I felt useless. But I remembered that feeling. That second when I came back to life a little. And I did a couple more bends. 5 push-ups. Without faith. Without emotion. Just like a gesture. This time it was even worse than the first. Everything hurt. Nothing inside clicked. But I didn't regret it. Because I did something. And that was more than nothing. That's how a habit began, which didn't look like a habit. More like resistance to emptiness. Every morning I did the same thing. Bends. Push-ups. Sometimes just 3 minutes of stretching. Funny? Maybe. But it was my survival ritual. The first time, I didn't even write down what I started. I didn't keep a diary. I didn't check boxes. I just did it. Sometimes through pain. Sometimes through irritation. Sometimes with the thought, this is all useless. But I did it. And day after day, something new accumulated inside. Not motivation. Not inspiration. But movement. Inertia. And then something happened that I didn't expect. On the 8th or 9th day, I woke up, and immediately went to get up. Without an internal struggle. I just stood up and started to warm up. And after 5 minutes I caught myself thinking. What if I add some squats? It wasn't me fighting myself. It was my body that wanted to move. And that was where the pattern was broken. Motivation didn't come to my head. It came to my body. I didn't think, I have to. I just did it. And for the first time in a long time I felt that I wasn't a victim of my apathy. That I could do something. At least something. Over the next few days I started doing a little more. Sometimes I'd add a run. Sometimes I'd read 5 pages. Sometimes I'd just drink water and clean up. Each of these actions was like a tiny fire. Not a flame. But a warm spark. I started noticing that after these actions thoughts came. I wanted to do something else. Write. Clean out folders. Reply to a friend. Motivation was still not a storm. But it was trailing behind me like a train. I didn't follow it, it followed me. It was harder in the evenings. Darkness always brought back weakness. Doubts. Anxiety. But now I had a weapon. Small, simple, but mine. If it got really bad, I did 10 push-ups. Yes, again. It didn't solve all the problems. But it didn't let me fall deeper. Each such effort is like a thrown anchor. So as not to drown. On the 20th or 30th day, I wrote in my diary. I didn't become super productive. I didn't start doing everything. But I no longer waited for inspiration to start. I just did it. And I knew, motivation will catch up. She always catches up with those who are already on the move. I was washing dishes. An ordinary evening, nothing special. And suddenly, I stopped. I looked at the sink. At the clean stove. At the fact that the kitchen was not littered with garbage, like before. And I realized. You are not the same person you were a month ago for a long time. It was a simple moment. No fanfare, no epiphanies. Just a thought, I no longer live like someone who gave up. And this thought became a turning point. When you do at least something for yourself every day. Not out of a sense of duty, not because you have to, but because you don't want to be in the swamp anymore. Something inside begins to grow. Not pride. Not ego. But respect. Quiet, calm, without unnecessary words. I started going to bed a little earlier. Stopped getting stuck in the feed. I got back reading, a notebook, walks. Not because of motivation. But because my head was in order. And I didn't want to go back to chaos anymore. A month and a half later, I really looked at myself in the mirror for the first time. Not fleetingly. Not judgmentally. But for real. And I didn't recognize the face. Yes, the features were the same. The fatigue remained. But the look became different. The look of a person who is not afraid of himself. Who knows, I'm not perfect, but I'm moving forward. Which means I'm alive. Thoughts began to change. I noticed how my thoughts changed. Before, they were short, aggressive, fragmentary. You didn't do anything again. You're worthless. You're just lazy. Now they sounded different. You're tired, but you did it anyway. You could have given up, but you moved on. You're not a hero, but you're honest. You are real. This was the most important shift. Not the body. Not productivity. But a conversation with myself. From the inside. I no longer waited for motivation. I did. Every day. And the most interesting thing is that motivation began to come more and more often. But not as a flash, not as a pumped-up hype from TikTok. But as a warm wave. Do you succeed, you want to do more. This is a feedback loop. This is where strong people live. Not waiting for a miracle, but in motion. I wrote then. Every day when I wait for inspiration, I stand still. Every day when I do without inspiration, I move. The difference is 1%. But it is this percentage that turns silence into life.